here. The first time I came to Oldham County was many years ago for soccer. My middle son was a soccer player, so I think we know every soccer field in Oldham County, Jefferson County, you name it. We've been all over the place playing soccer, but it is good to be here. It's my first time in City Place. This is a beautiful building, and you guys should be proud of it. The report from Washington is both, good and bad. Depends on how you want to look at it. The good news is I think we are the richest, freest, greatest nation on the planet and probably in the history of civilization, and still remain so. The bad news, though, is that we've got some underlying fundamental problems in our country. And I think number one among those is our debt. We borrow about $1 million every minute. And this threatens our country. It threatens the underpinnings of the currency. It threatens the foundation of the country to have so much debt. And we've kind of been lulled to sleep. We have people saying, well, it's, deficits don't matter that much. And, the interest payment is about the same as it was 10 years ago. And in some ways, there's a grain of truth to that. About 10 years ago, 8 years ago, our debt was 10 trillion, and the interest payment was 230 billion. It's hard to imagine these numbers, they're very big numbers. But now the debt's 20 trillion, twice as much, and the interest payment's still only 230 billion. People are like, no big deal, we doubled the debt, and our interest payment's the same because we've made interest rates so low. But there are ramifications to that. Anybody remember the housing bubble of 2008? One of the reasons we kept building houses is we didn't get feedback that we built too many. The number one feedback that you produce too much stuff and that there's an overheated economy, the number one indicator is interest rates rising. What if the Federal Reserve keeps interest rates low? The signal to businessmen and women is keep building houses. So we did. We kept chugging along, and there were people saying home prices had never gone down. This was true. The average home price had not gone down from 1937 to 2007, so people said it never will. And sure enough, it did. There was a reversal. But we got overextended, not because of a failure of capitalism, but because government pushed us in that direction. So why does government, or why did the Federal Reserve want low interest rates? Because we have this massive debt to finance, and also because some believe you stimulate the economy by doing that. But there are ramifications. We suffered that, and we had a great dislocation. My fear is that we are sort of building towards another one, that we have low interest rates that are still stimulating, and we're not getting the proper signals as to whether we're overproducing or underproducing, whether we should build more, whether we should buy more stock or less stock. So I'm still worried about the country. Admiral Mullins a few years ago said that the number one threat to our national security is actually our debt. And I do believe that. Great countries and great empires have ended with a whimper as they get overextended and they say they're going to be everything to everyone around the world, and there's just not enough money for it. So currently we're borrowing $1 million every minute. And you say, well, how can we cut back? Isn't all of government necessary? Well, one of the things we do in our office, and you're welcome if there's an email list to get on our email list, is we put out something every week or two talking about where some money is being spent that maybe you might agree with us is being wasted. It's called the Waste Report. Last week we came out with the discovery that the government spent $1.25 million on a cartoon in Afghanistan. The cartoon had a noble purpose, to say they shouldn't use drugs anymore. Since we've been there, the poppy production has tripled. We spent about $8 billion eradicating the poppy. And my friend Thomas Massey likes to say, you know what? We should have just bought Roundup. $8 billion worth of Roundup's a lot of Roundup. Instead, though, the government we instituted, Karzai, his brother was a drug baron, made millions off of it until somebody finally murdered him. They were involved in the drug trade, the people we installed as the government. So I think a lot of that money gets squandered. But I also think there's a limited amount of money, so we should make decisions on where we spend it. So we spent over $100 billion in Afghanistan on infrastructure. Well, I personally would rather build roads here than in Afghanistan. They build them, they blow them up, they build them, they blow them up, and we keep rebuilding them. But we don't have enough really to fix the problems we've got in our country. So I think we need to concentrate at home. One of the things I introduced recently was to take some of the foreign aid money that's going overseas. There was $8 billion left in the account. I proposed what we do is take that $8 billion out of the foreign aid account and put it into the transportation account. We're short of road money. Representative Osborne will tell you that. They're always struggling to come up with enough money to meet the needs. You go to northern Kentucky, they're trying to build a bridge is 50 years old up there. There's not enough money for all the things to do in our country. So I think we have to set some priorities and decide whether or not we have enough to pave other people's country and build bridges overseas when we can't afford to build our own. I've also proposed another way that we can get more money for transportation. And there's $2 trillion worth of American profit overseas. It's great. American companies are selling stuff to people in other countries, and that's wonderful. Apple has $180 billion. They're a great company. They sell iTunes, iPhones, iPads, computers, everything overseas. They pay tax where they sell it, but then it's the profit, it's American profit. They want to actually bring it home, but the tax to bring it home is 35%. So if they're selling iTunes in France, the income tax, so there's 20% for corporations, they pay that, then they have to pay another 35% or the difference to bring it home. But they can borrow money at 2%. So Apple has all this big cache of money, and to pay their dividends, they're borrowing money to pay their dividends. They borrow money at 2% rather than to pay 35% to bring it home. So in 2005, we lowered the tax from 35% to 5%, $300 billion came home. It's a huge stimulus. It's real money, not borrowed money. It all came home. There's now $2 trillion overseas, and I have an economist that says over $1 trillion of it will come home with a voluntary tax, and I actually have a Democrat co-sponsor at 6.5. I'd probably go to 5, but if I can only get 6.5, I'd take 6.5. Voluntary tax, $1 trillion comes home, but the tax on that would be about $70 to $80 billion. I'd put it directly into the road fund, not into the general fund, which is sort of a black hole. Put it just directly into the road fund, something we don't care what party you're in, we all can agree, let's improve the infrastructure in the country. And I've had trouble getting it passed, but I think it's popular among the people. And if you like the idea and you think, what's a way we could actually reduce a tax and get more money for something, I think we ought to think about it and maybe talk to our representatives about doing it. I think that when we look at our country's finances, we should do something that every one of you have to do, balance the budget. Anybody here borrow money for rent? Borrow money for groceries? Nobody borrows money for their daily expenses. Now you might borrow money for a house, but it's something of concrete value that the bank holds against the note. But the bank's not going to loan you money for groceries or for rent. That's what our country's doing. We're borrowing money for Social Security because we spend more than comes in. We have some fundamental imbalances in our country, and we need to fix them. And we have to decide priorities. If you come today and you're going to tell me about something that you want money for, what I always tell everybody that comes is, tell me something you don't want me to spend it on so I can find money to spend it on what you want me to spend it on. But don't just simply think there's more extra money, hey, come spend money on something, unless we're willing to talk about where we're going to cut it. And I think there are areas to cut. I'll give you a couple other examples of where we spent money that I think we maybe shouldn't. We spent $500,000 on a climate change application game, a video app for your phone, so you can learn about climate change. We spent $15 million in the Philippines to have them ready for climate change. So when, and the prediction, according to, I think, alarmist, is that the Philippines will be underwater in 10 or 15 years, which is ridiculous. But, you know, if they are, I don't know how 15 million is going to help them, but apparently we're supposed to teach them about getting ready for climate change by giving 15 million to them. We spent 45 million in Afghanistan on a natural gas station. Came out of the Defense Department. Think about that for a minute. How many people in Afghanistan have a car? Not very many. How many people in Afghanistan you think have a car that runs on natural gas? If we had a natural gas station in Oldham County, who would be able to buy their gas there? Nobody's got a car. But you know what? Somebody decided that the Defense Department was going green, and that because of climate change, we need to have our military go green. But you know, I think it's probably more important that they have bullets, guns that work, vehicles that protect them, and that we are worried about our military, but not about going green, not about climate change. That's not the job of your soldiers. And they're kind of distracted if they're worried about climate change and not defending the country. So I think we have to be aware of that. There is money right and left that's being wasted. If you want it for something else, be aware that it's being wasted. The worst one that I've come across the last couple of years is we spent a couple $100,000 studying Japanese quail to see if they're more sexually promiscuous on cocaine. I think we could have just stipulated probably and saved a lot of money. But this stuff goes on year after year after year. I remember being a kid, William Proxmire had this thing called the Golden Fleece Award, and he gave an award every week or two to wasteful spending. It goes on and on. Is it enough to balance the budget? Maybe not, but it's still not an excuse for why we shouldn't do better. One other thing that I proposed that I think would work throughout government is I give money back. The only budget I completely control is my own office budget. So I'm giving $2.4 million back to the Treasury because I think I can do the job with $2.4 million less. If every senator did that and every congressman did that, starts to add up to real money. But what if every federal government official did that? So what I would do, and what I've introduced, is a bill called bonuses for cost cutters. I would give federal employees bonuses if they save money. So if you're in charge of a $12 million Department of Energy budget and you'll save the taxpayer $1 million and still get your job done, give you a bonus. Put some incentives in the way real business works, the way private business works. The problem is, what we have in Washington is the opposite. We have something called use it or lose it. So you get to the last month of the fiscal year and the money is spent 5 times faster in the last month of the year. Coincidence? Just happens that in the last month of the year, you notice that a lot of these government officials are in Las Vegas at conventions, $1 million conventions. One of them a couple years ago spent, I think it was $50,000 doing a skit at one of their conventions, and I think it was the living dead and climate change. They had a skit including zombies with your money. So we have to look at what we're doing, and I think we can do it a lot better. I think there's a lot of ways we can look at it, and I want to be part of the solution, looking at it as a problem solver, as a physician, and someone trying to figure it out. I think we can do a lot better than what we're doing. I think we're still a great country, but I do think that we have to be very, very careful that our government not get so big that it overwhelms us. I'm going to keep working in that on your behalf, and I appreciate you coming out today. Thank you.